Good morning, scholars. Today we're going to continue our way through Far's Homeric Greek, a book for beginners, continuing Lesson 20, looking at the uses of participles, attributive, circumstantial, and supplementary. So, to start, the participle is always used in connection with a substantive, that is a noun, or with a substantive pronoun, which may be contained in the verbal form. So as diaguse mathontes, diaguse mathontes, they spend their time learning. So we see that diaguse is third plural, so therefore our participle is plural, and it is nominative agreeing with the nominative that's inside of the verbal form. That is, they spend their time diagusen manthonontes. Okay. So, the tenses of participles. The tenses of the participle, except the future, not in indirect discourse, are timeless and denote only a stage of action. When they stand in indirect discourse and represent the indicative, they may denote time relative to that of the main verb. So you'll see what indirect and not indirect discourse means towards the end of this presentation. But for now, just let's look at the general tense senses that the tense of the participles have. So the present is usually representing action coincidental with that of the main verb. Very rarely is it antecedent or subsequent. The future, as we'll see, is chiefly voluntative, that is, it expresses objective or purpose. The aorist has the aspect of simple occurrence, but often marks an action that has occurred preceding the main verb. And the perfect, as you would expect, has the sense of completion with a permanent result. So if you look at Smythe, section 1874, he has details and numerous examples of these temporal significations of participles. So feel free to consult that very informative section. Now, the future participle is very special. The future participle marks an action as in prospect at the time denoted by the leading verb. Since it expresses an idea of will, it shows that an action is purposed, intended, or expected. So, in lines 12-13 of our poem, we had Hogar elte, do asepineas akayon, lysόμενος tetugatra. And lysόμενos is a future participle. And so, this is speaking of the action of the priest. He had come, or he came, to the swift ships of the Achaeans, lysόμενos, intending to ransom, expecting, hoping to ransom his daughter. So that's the sense of the present participle. And then you see it's aside the future participle, and it's aside this present participle, fέρων da peresia poina, which is just coincident with the action. He's carrying a lot of beautiful ransom, luscious ransom, but that action is, as the present participle often is, merely coincidence with the action of the verb. It does not have the voluntative aspect of lysόμενos, intending to release his daughter. Okay, so the subject of the participle is identical with the noun or pronoun subject or object of the leading verb, and agrees with it in gender, number, and case. So this is the sense in which a participle always functions like an adjective and agrees with whatever it refers to in gender, number, and case. So in this first example, by leaving the road and making off, only a few were killed. Lipontes tein hodon, bugontes, oligoi apethnescon. We see our participles, lipontes and bugontes. They are both nominative plural in agreement with the subject that's been supplied here, hoi anthropoi. Whereas the second example, having sent a herald in advance to proclaim war, the subject isn't mentioned. It's probably the hoi athenaioi or something, some such thing. Pro pimsantes keruka polemon pro erunta. Pro erunta is a future participle, and it is in the accusative singular, agreeing with keruka, which is the object of the initial participle pro pimsantes, which is masculine plural nominative, agreeing with the unexpressed subject. So sending ahead a herald in order to declare polemon. So polemon here is actually the direct object of proerunton, to proclaim what? To proclaim polemon, war. So we see, and I'll just read it again so you can put it all together. The subject of the participle is identical with the noun or pronoun, subject or object of the leading verb, and agrees with it in gender, number, and case. So, as I said in the second example, proerunta agrees with keruka, which is the object of the verb, main verb, and lipontes and pugontes agree with ho anthropoi being the subject of the main verb in the first example. Okay. So the negative of participles is ou, except when a participle has general or conditional force or occurs in a sentence which requires may. And we'll jump off those bridges when we get to them, but just remember that generally speaking, the participle will be negated by ou. Now, here's the main core of this presentation. The participle has three main uses. Attributive, where it serves as an attribute to a substantive or noun, pronoun. B, circumstantial or adverbial, denoting some attendant circumstance and qualifying the main verb like an adverbial phrase or clause. And C, supplementary, as a supplement to a verbal predicate, which, without such a supplement, would be incomplete. So let's look at each of these and the examples of them that we've seen so far. So, attributive. The attributive participle with any modifier, with or without the article, modifies a substantive like any other adjective. So these examples that are supplied by Smythe are from Demosthenes, and this is when the definite article is fully active. So in each of these cases, we have a definite article accompanying the attributive participle. So, ho epestekos kendunos te pole, the danger impending over the state. Epestekos is a perfect active participle, hanging over, which has come to hang over the state. And in the second example, the existing enemies, hoi ontes, ekthroi, the being, the real enemies. And then the third example, the present crisis, ho paron kairos, the present paron from par emi, being beside, the paron kairos, the present crisis. But since Homer has yet to really have the developed sense of the definite article, we see his uses of attributive participles not accompanied by the definite article so much. So in line 18, we've seen humen men doi doyen olympia domat ekontes, where ekontes is our attributive participle in the nominative plural, masculine, because it agrees with doi, the noun subject, and ekontes has as its direct object the adjective and noun combination olympia domat. So theoi olympia domat ekontes just is an example of the attributive use. Likewise, the attributive use occurred in line 2. Meinen aidetea pele iado akileos οὐλομένην. Οὐλομένην is simply serving as an adjective to meinen, and but in fact it's a middle participle of olume. So the next use is circumstantial. The circumstantial participle is added without the article to a noun or pronoun to set forth some circumstance under which an action, generally the main action, takes place. Okay, so most important here is that the circumstantial participle will always be without the article. And reading 2060, the circumstantial participle expresses simply circumstance or manner in general. It may imply various other relations such as time, manner, means, cause, purpose, concession, condition, but it is often impossible to assign a participle exclusively to any one of these relations, which are purely logical, nor can all the delicate relations of the participle be set forth in systematic form. However that may be, if you look at this passage in full in Smythe, he has numerous examples where participles will, say, be concessive and mean although, conditional and mean if, be equivalent to a dependent clause if, and so on. So again, this is a very worthwhile section to study. But let's look at the circumstantial participles we've seen so far. So the first one we saw was the dual first aorist participle, ex hu de ta prota, diaste ten ἐρίσαντε, atre ides te anaxandron kai dios akileus. So this is dual because it agrees with the subjects, or the dual subject, atre ides, and kai akileus, those two. And it modifies, they stood apart. They stood over against one another. How? ἐρίσαντε, in contention, in, they basically had they went chest to chest. We'll see the face-off between Agamemnon and Achilles in a while, which is truly marvelous. And you'll see that they're just basically having a real kind of macho in each other's face type thing, ἐρίσαντε. So that's describing how they came to differ, okay? And then likewise, again, in line 9, we have hoga basilei hολωθείς, nuson anastraton orse kaken. So Apollo, he sent or let loose an evil plague upon the army. But why? Hολωθείς, having been angered at the king. Ho gar basilei hολωθείς. And so here again, circumstantial, it describes the manner or the circumstance, really almost causal here, because he was angry at the king. So it's a good example of the participle having this causal sense. Likewise, in the extended passage that has 3 actual participial forms, describing the arrival and intentions of the priest, Hogar el tetuas epineas akaion, lysamenos tetugathra, peron ta peresia poina, stemat ἐχών in kersen wekebolu apollonos. So we have 3 participles here. Lysamenos, which we've already talked about as expressing intention because it's future. But then we have fέρων and ἔχων, describing in the present the circumstance that he was carrying this loot, ransom, this boundless ransom for his daughter, but also carrying in his other hand his the staff of a priest, ἔχων stemata in kersen, actually the fillets of the staff he had was holding with his hand. And so this fέρων and ἔχων describe the manner with which he elte, with which he came to the ships. Okay, so good example of circumstantial participles. I think this is the last one we're going to look at, ἀζόμενοι, when the priest says to Agamemnon and the Achaeans, Paida demoi lusaite pilen, ta da poina de kestai, ἀζόμενοι de os we on hekebalon apollona. Well, ἀζόμενοι agrees with the pronoun that's implicit in lusaite. Hey, you guys, release my daughter. And release her. Why? Because you reverence, or in a manner which displays that you reverence ἀζόμενοι, the far thrower Apollo, son of Zeus. So there's a very special sub-form or group of circumstantial participles, this thing called the Genitive Absolute, which Latin students will see as equivalent to the Ablative Absolute. But it doesn't occur so much in Homer, but you find it here and there. And so the Genitive Absolute is a circumstantial participle agreeing with a genitive noun or pronoun, which is not in the main construction of the sentence, stands in the Genitive Absolute. Like other circumstantial participles, the Genitive Absolute expresses time, cause, condition, concession, or simply any attendant circumstance. Now, he goes a bit deeper and looks at the origin of these. He says at 2075, the Genitive Absolute took its rise from such cases as sarpedoni dakos geneto glauku apiontos. But sorrow came to Sarpedon for Glaucus having departed, going away. And the genitive here, properly dependent on alkos geneto, pain came of Glaucus departing, ceased to be felt as dependent on the governing expression and was extended as a distinct construction to cases in which the governing expression did not take the genitive. And so you should study this section if you want to get some sense of how this developed. But we'll see an example coming up very soon in lines 46, 47. Eklaxan dar oistoi ep homon ko omenoio autu kene tentos. And this will be the description of Apollo descending on the camp. I'm not going to take time to analyze it right now, but know that it is coming up. Okay, the final main group is called the supplementary participle. And the supplementary participle completes the idea of the verb by showing that to which its action relates. So the supplementary participle agrees either with the subject or with the object of the main verb, with the subject when the verb is transitive, intransitive, or passive, and with the object when the verb is transitive. So the example here, I never cease pitying ourselves, upot epaomen hemas oiktiron. Oiktiron is your nominative singular masculine participle agreeing with the subject I inside of epaomen. Okay, I never stop pitying, or we never stop pitying ourselves. I never stop pitying ourselves. I'm sorry. You do have a singular subject, but the hemas is the plural object of the verbal idea inside of oiktiro, to pity. Okay, so this supplementary participle breaks down into two different usage. You have the supplementary participle in indirect discourse, and this is where it follows verbs of knowing and showing, verbs of perception, or verbs of finding. That is, and we'll see an example of verbs of finding. Smythe lists the types of verbs that are involved and gives examples of these. So you can examine these as your leisure, but I really just want to give the rough idea here. So we can look at an example that we've just had when Agamemnon is scaring away the priests. Me segeron koile senego paraneusi kikeo, e nun de tunont, e husteron autes ionta. So Agamemnon says, I better not, I hope I don't find you, I hope I don't discover you, either dethunont, either delaying, hanging about, or coming back again. So dethunont and ionta are these supplementary participles in indirect discourse, i.e., just like you might say, well, I found a cat. Okay, these participles are equivalent to the objects. Agamemnon saying, I better not find you hanging about or coming back. Okay, so this is a good example of the supplementary participle right off the bat in line 27, or actually two supplementary participles. Okay, then otherwise we have the supplementary participle not in indirect discourse, which is often just like an object infinitive, the tenses denoting only the stage of action and not a difference of time. And you can look at these examples of Smythe, but I'm going to jump to the examples that Monro gives us, where he describes this as implied predication. And he says, where the participle is predicative, we often find the noun or pronoun taking the place in the construction of the whole participial clause. Okay, so that's a little convoluted, but if we look at these examples, you'll see what's going on. Okay, ud elat atreos we on patroklos troesi dames. So here our main verb is from elate and ud elate, nor did it escape notice. Okay, what didn't escape notice? That Patroclus had been slain, had been slain by the Trojans. That Patroclus, the son of Atreus, ud elat atreos we on, Patroclos troesi damastes. Oh, no, okay. So the son of Atreus here, I'm sorry, is Agamemnon. It did not escape the son of Atreus that Patroclus had been slain. So dames is a passive aorist passive participle. See the epsilon, iota, sigma. The second example is a little clearer. It troubled her that he was melegarhoi αίχων in damasi nymphes. It was a sadness to her, being that she was in the house of the nymph. Okay, and or the next example, gignoske deu gnonon eu αίοντα. He knew him to be an offspring of the god. So these circumstantial participles, not in indirect discourse, are a little harder to get your mind around, but there are certain verbs, the most significant being that one in the first example here, lantano, to escape notice. He did not escape notice, stealing the car, i.e. he was seen. So we'll look at these examples of these as we come across them. Okay, so there are our participles. Remember, we have mainly attributive, circumstantial, and supplementary. And supplementary are either in or out of indirect discourse. And so we'll keep a careful watch on these as we go forward. So good luck with your Greek. Keep working hard, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.